Hello everyone and welcome back to another spreadsheets tutorial with Google Sheets. In this tutorial, which is linked here, and I have it open here, we're going to talk a little bit more about the fill handle and some of the different ways you can use it to manipulate the way cells are automatically filled. Because remember, the goal of anything on a computer is to eliminate that which is tedious and error prone. We don't like doing things that are boring and repetitive, and we don't like doing things that we can screw up because humans aren't perfect at doing things that are dull and repetitive. We're really good at doing things that have a little bit of variety, and we're good at incorporating novel experiences into our kind of reality. But doing dull and repetitive tasks is something that we sometimes struggle to do, especially if they're mathematically oriented. So if you look at the tutorial, it actually will show you a few examples of what I'm talking about. I'm going to open up a blank one, a blank spreadsheet, and zoom in just a little bit here. And so, for example, what the fill handle does is it copies and pastes. So if I put a number 1 in this cell and drag it down, it's going to fill all the cells below it with 1s, which is great. That's awesome. However, what happens if I do like a 1 and a 2? And I want you to do these things. I want you to open a blank spreadsheet and do that. You're not going to turn this in, but I want you to do this because you need to like experience doing this process. If I select these two cells and then drag this down, it will actually follow that pattern. I'll actually get so if I have 1 and then a 2, so these two cells are counting by 1s, and then I highlight both of them, drag the fill handle down, that's going to continue counting by 1s. I can do the same thing by saying 1, 3, and dragging that down. I can say 2, 4, and then drag that down. And then this one will count by odd numbers, this one will count by even numbers. I can do 5, 10. I can do kind of any sort of weird pattern I want. I can count by whatever 6s, and it will follow that pattern exactly. You may even be able to do like more interesting series like Fibonacci numbers or things like that. So you could do like 1, 1, and then this one is equals that plus that, and then drag that down, and then you get the Fibonacci sequence, which is cool. It's like really... It's a very interesting tool because it will repeat whatever it is that you're asking it to do. And it doesn't work just for numbers. I can do days of the week, both full name and abbreviated. I can do months of the year, even 3-letter abbreviations. If I copy these down into the cells below using the fill handle, this little widget down here, it will copy those as if I had done that by hand. I can do 1 o'clock, and it will increment that. I can do days of the month, like today is the 22nd of October, the year 2020, and I drag that down, and it will increment by days. So you can do all sorts of interesting things with this new power. But let's try something else. Let's just like create some random numbers. Let's say random numbers between 1 and 10. And then let's just fill a column with them. And then control, edit, paste, values only. There we go. And then we get rid of it. So I have some random numbers here that I'm going to mess around with. Now, as we saw in the last one, if I were to reference a cell next to it, so cell A1, so equals A1, I can in this cell, start with an equal sign to create a formula, and then just reference the cell next door. So I'm just saying, I want this cell to equal the cell next to it. Oh, cool. Well, that gives me the 8, too. If I drag this fill handle down, it has this really cool effect where it does the same thing in each cell. It looks to the cell to the left. If you hold on the control key and hit the tilde key, it'll swap you over to formula view, and you can see what happened to the formula was the A always stayed the same, but in each cell that I dragged it down, the row number incremented by 1. went up by 1. So each one is referencing one cell below the one that I referenced before. So this cell is referencing the one cell to his left, and this cell is referencing the one to his left, and this one's referencing the one to his left. All the way down the line, they're all referencing the cell to their left. And this is an interesting phenomenon and a very useful one because it allowed us to do things like we did in the previous tutorial where we were multiplying things together and we wanted to continue to do those multiplications down the whole column. So it allows you to save a lot of time so you don't have to continually retype in those formulas. But there's another kind of reference. If I reference this cell again, and this time I add a little extra syntax, I'm going to put the way to create what's called an absolute reference is to put a $sign in before each of the coordinates. So $sign before the A and a $sign before the 1 creates the absolute reference to cell A1. So what exactly is an absolute reference? Well, whereas all the other ones where it was just A1, well, let's actually just keep A1 here, and I'm going to keep this column in. So these are relative references because they reference the cell relative to wherever they are. So if this one says A1 and I copy that down, they're all going to be referencing one cell to the left. So it's referencing that cell relative to where it is. If I want to reference a cell absolutely, I add these $signs in and then copy it. Now, if you're just doing 1, it doesn't matter what you do. It's always just going to do the same thing. So these cells all have 8 when they copy. But if I copy it down, this really only matters if you're using the fill handle or using copy and paste. If you're using copy and paste because it's the best way to save time and effort, you can use an absolute reference to ensure that it's always going to reference cell A1. So these ones incremented, these ones all stay the same. You can think of the $sign as being like a lock on each one of these two coordinates. So we're going to use this. It's maybe a little bit nicer if we can see this in action. So back in the tutorial page, there is a start file for this. So go ahead and copy that to your Google Drive. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to say File, make a copy. I'm going to call it Payroll. You can call it whatever you want, doesn't matter. I'm going to hop back over to my ITECH 100 folder, hit select and save it, and close the original one so I don't accidentally edit it and mess up your guys' work. I don't want your save file to have all of the answers in it automatically. So here we go. We're going to make this a little bit bigger so it looks good on your screens. So we're going to do 2 little mini projects in this one. So you'll see 2 sheets. You'll notice the second one is blank. We'll get to that in a minute. So here's like a payroll report. Just made a payroll report. It's missing some things. There's some blank cells here. There's some blank cells here. We're going to fill those in. So let's start simple. How do we calculate the gross pay here? If we want to fill in this column, how do we do that? Gross pay is just how many hours you worked times how much you make per hour. So we start with equal, click on cell B3, which is the hours, and click, and then times with a star, and then click on the other one, and then you'll see that the tooltip gives you your predicted result, which is what it is. And notice it actually automatically predicts the number format, which is nice. Now taxes. Okay, so in this imaginary scenario, we have this totally regressive flat tax that has no bearing on reality. We use tax brackets in the United States, and it's a little different. So we take gross pay. So we're just going to use this as a simplified example because it's interesting. So if we want to find out how much money goes to the government, we're going to have to multiply that gross pay by 27%. So times 27% gives us $216. Great. Now equals how much money does the employee get? Well, they're going to get their gross pay minus how much the government took, and that's their net pay. Awesome. So the first row is done. Easy as pie. Let's use the fill handle to fill this in and see what happens. So you select these 3 cells, grab the fill handle, drag it down a little bit, and you'll notice that for some reason 3 of our employees are not paying any taxes at all. Everything else filled in correctly. but these are all basically equal to 0. So why is that? Well, let's open it. Let's see what happened. Oh dear, look at this. When I drag the fill handle down, the reference to this cell incremented correctly to D4, but this one also went down 1. So I think this maybe is probably the biggest reveal for how relative references work. All of those references, when you drag it down or copy it down, are going to go down by 1 cell. So, how do we fix this? Well, let's clear this out and take a look at this formula, because this is the one that needs to be fixed. So we have D3. That one we want to stay the same. We want that one to increment down as we drag it down. This one we don't. So we want those dollar signs in there. So a dollar sign here and a dollar sign here. By the way, the keyboard shortcut is the F4 key. So if you hit F4, it automatically adds both dollar signs. You just put the insertion point next to the cell reference, hit F4, and it'll add them in. So now we hit enter, and we copy it down, and we get perfectly calculated tax results. You'll notice this is multiplying that times the same cells. So we use kind of a mixture of relative and absolute references to create this really simple little thing. And why would we do this again? You'll remember from the previous tutorial that this is a situation where if I can reuse this payroll tax form by just changing this number. If the taxes changed or they went up, then everything else just automatically updates. It's really super simple. Oop, it was supposed to be 27. Cool. Let's add a total row just for fun. This is real super easy. You can just highlight these. So let's find out how many person hours were worked at our business this week. We just highlight the 4 cells we want to add together. We go up to the functions menu and hit sum, and that gives us the sum. B3 through B6, and enter. We'll copy and paste this across. It might be nice to add these. So this is like, this represents how much money we spend per person hour. This is how much we're paying total to anybody. This is the check we got to cut to the government, and this is how much is going to our employees. So you might want to, like, one thing I would do is you can like select one of these, hit the format painter, and then copy that across to give everything the same dollar sign format. And that's it. That one's done. Let's move on to another example of how we can use absolute references. So we have cells. I'm going over this times table sheet here. So I have number 5 here, and I want to reference it. There's actually 4 different types of references. There's totally relative references, which is what this is, D6. There's totally absolute reference, which is $D, $6. Then there's 2 versions of mixed references. So here's one with the dollar sign in the middle. Here's one with the dollar sign at the beginning. If you think of it like each of these dollar signs is locking in that particular coordinate, so this dollar sign locks the D, this dollar sign locks the 6, that's a good way to think of it, because we're going to kind of exploit this fact right now. I'll scroll on this part of the tutorial here. Okay, so we're going to start with an X for times. Remember how a times table works. You have 1 through 10 on the top, 1 through 10 on the side, and then you want to multiply each number in the top row by each number in the left column and fill in this whole table. You have to do this as a drill, or how to do this by rote when you're in grade school. Well, we don't want to do it by rote. We don't want to do it by hand. It's horrible. Big pain in the butt. So instead, we're going to try to automate this process. So I just put the numbers 1 through 10 here, and I use the trick of doing 1, 2, and then dragging the fill handle down. Oops, up 1. Whoops. I'll just delete it. Okay. Let's make it a little prettier. Let's select these cells and these cells, and we'll make them. Let's do like a dark background color and white text. Make it bold. Yeah, it looks nice. Okay, and then maybe we'll even resize the columns just a little bit. Oh, that's a little bit too small. Let's go like that. Okay. Okay. So how does a times table work? We want to multiply the number in. So in this cell, let's just concentrate on this cell, because the whole goal is to do the task once and then repeat it for all of the other ones. So let's just do 1 times 1. That's the only one we're going to do by hand. So equals 1 times 1. Perfect. Now I could go and do this by hand and fill in each one, but I really don't want to. So let's just go ahead and see if we can do the fill handle. If I drag this over here, it'll fill in that row, but it's not quite right. Okay, this one's fine. Oh, that's not. Oh dear. I know that 1 times 10 is not 3,628,800. That is not right. And what even happens if I do this? If I drag it all the way down, I actually get this crazy stuff that's happening here. Numeric value greater than 1.79 times 10 to the 308th power cannot be displayed properly. We have overflowed Sheets' ability to represent numbers. Why is that happening? Because we use relative references. So this number, each one of these is just multiplying the top number by the cell to its left. So these numbers were getting even bigger and even bigger. And what's worse, like this one, is multiplying this gigantic number with this gigantic number to get an even more gigantic number. And thus that's what we have down here as well. So this is a problem. Let's undo all of our hard work here and see if we can't fix this. We can't use absolute references either, because if I did that, what would happen? I would have a table full of ones. So I'm not going to do that either. So we have to do something else. And I think you could probably predict that we're going to use some kind of mixed reference. So let's think about this. Let's think about how we're going to do this. Every one of these cells, every cell in this table, must be multiplied by something in row 1 and something in column A. So every single cell reference in here is going to have, every single one of these formulas is going to have some reference to row 1 and some reference to column A. So in this first coordinate, we want to lock in the 1, because that means that everything will be multiplied by something in row 1. So if we hit F4 until there's a dollar sign before the 1, but not before the B, that's right. Now here the same thing we want to do is lock in the A. So our dollar sign goes here. And you can use the F4 key to cycle through all the different cell references. So this gives us the same result, but it gives us one distinct advantage, which is that if I now drag this out, I get my nice, neat times table all the way from 1 to 100. 1 times 1 to 10 times 10. And if you've gotten to this point, you are done and you can submit it as normal. So I lost, there it is. So if I wanted to submit this, we want to share. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this gave you kind of a sense of the sorts of things that you can do with different kinds of references, because this is an incredibly powerful tool. Actually, I just want to use this format here. Go ITECH 100 and find payroll. Where is you? This one, I think. Submit. And that's it. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.